Hello, I'm Mayor Joyce Downing. Welcome to Northglenn Now, all about what's new in Northglenn. My guest today is Brooke Svoboda, Northglenn's Director of Planning and Development. Our topic is the Civic Center Master Plan. Welcome, Brooke. Before we discuss the master plan, why don't you tell us a little bit about the functions of planning and development and their role in the city?
Sure. Thank you for having me here today. The planning department is broken down into 4 divisions. We have the code enforcement, the building department, current planning, and long-range planning. Code enforcement covers the day-to-day complaints that we receive from residents regarding tall weeds and grass and trash of such. Our building department also covers building permits, which is, as it sounds, but everything from additions, remodels to residential homes to new construction and commercial buildings as well. Our current planning process is actually division is actually one of those things where if you have a larger project and it requires a public approval, that's what current planning typically represents. Recent examples of that is the SCL Hospital and Webster Lake Promenade, where those projects had to go through a public process first before they could start construction. And then lastly, we have the long-range planning part of our department, in which we cover projects like this, Civic Campus, also the comprehensive plan and the zoning code.
Okay. Well, you and your department, you're responsible for quite a bit. Can you tell us a little bit about the Civic Center Master Plan? And please explain what is a master plan and why other cities use them.
Sure. So a master plan is really a high-level planning effort that creates a vision for a specific area. And we do that through looking at several different filters. One is what types of uses do we want on the site? Can the infrastructure support those types of uses? Is it fiscally sound and financially feasible? Does it benefit the city, and how does it get paid for? And then lastly, we engage the community as well, where we seek public input. We want to have them educated as well as have them understand their concerns are being represented through the process. And then lastly, we also have a strategic plan, an implementation strategy as to how do we realize that vision.
Okay, Brooke, let's talk about Northglenn specifically. What about our Civic Center Master Plan? What part of the city are you looking at and why?
So we're looking at where we are today, where the rec center in the City Hall sits. It's approximately 22 acres. It's located just south of 120th, shouldered by I-25. Why we're doing this is because we want to look at a new municipal campus, as well as to better connect the Civic Center property to the surrounding area and its amenities, such as the SCL Hospital, E.B. Raines Park, Webster Lake Promenade, and also not to forget the Wagon Road RTD Park and Ride, which is a great pedestrian and also multimodal connection for the community as well.
Have you been working on this plan for a while?
Yes, we actually started last July, and the plan is to have the actual master plan wrapped up by the first quarter of next year. But it had a genesis, and that genesis was actually from 2 different efforts. It was back in the end of 2011 when the city first retained a master developer for what we called the Civic Campus area. It included what's now Webster Lake Promenade, as well as where the SCL Hospital is. And in that same effort, we were looking to see what was going to happen here for the Civic Campus. Another coinciding project at the same time was a City Hall and Police Department needs assessment. That assessment actually generated the outcome of saying we need to have a strategic effort, focused effort on what this area is going to look like. And so we created this master planning exercise to really sort of get it right and make sure that we had a good approach to figuring out what to do next.
So Brooke, are you proposing a new city hall and a new rec center? And what else might be included?
So part of what the consideration is that when we look at these other types of uses, is to realize how do these help inform or realize the vision for the overall site. There's also the issue of what's we now know as the Justice Center. Part of this exercise actually first evaluated to determine whether or not the police operations and the courts should remain on the site. And the early phases of this exercise did was identify that having those types of uses here with the adjacency to the park was not really an ideal situation. So that's in part why the Justice Center has now been branched off and is its own separate exercise right now.
It's a big change in this area. What type of research have you done to determine what is best?
Sure. So as part of this effort that we started in July, we retained a consultant team led by a group called MIG. And part of what they have done, and kind of what we referred to earlier as those filters, is that we are looking at the infrastructure, the transportation, planning, architecture, market feasibility, as well as strategic planning. And so what strategic implementation and planning, and what we're really trying to figure out here is that how do all these parts and pieces fit together, and how do we really help create a vision for that? We want to create something more than just a plan that sits on a shelf. We want to also figure out how do we make it a reality. And through that, we've done several council meetings. We started out with study sessions. We've also done one-on-one meetings with the elected officials to understand what their goals and objectives are for this type of effort. And we've incorporated that as part of the foundation for what this entire project is about. There's other pieces to this puzzle that we've also brought in, which is we have coordination with the leadership team, which is, you know, the Parks Director, Public Works, the City Manager, Finance, and we've asked those stakeholders as well to be a part of the process and contribute and share their thoughts and concerns with us as well. As I mentioned earlier, we have this public outreach process. They get to understand how the process was started, where it's going, as well as engage them and ask them for feedback. And we're going to do it in a couple of different ways. We're actually going to have where they can go up and interact and tell us what they like and don't like, and also have an opportunity to actually write down and inform us of some of the things that they're thinking of. So it's really a sort of very elaborate process to say, we want to know what you're thinking. We want you to be a part of this process. And then finally, as we're moving forward, we're going to report those findings from this outreach exercise to the City Council and do the next major step, which is really testing how we make this a reality and bring that forward to Council and have them weigh in and give us their feedback before we finalize the report. And then that's when we'll create the next implementation strategy.
When this plan is implemented, what is it going to mean for the people of Northglenn, and how long will it take?
So I think what it means for the community is that it's a once in a generation plan that really gives the community an opportunity to see what this is going to look like over the next 25, 30 years. I think it's also important that it's something that the generations to come in Northglenn will be very proud of. It gives us another opportunity to sort of really stand out in the North Metro Denver region as a place that is unique and distinctive. And lastly, I think it'll take several years to roll out. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. It needs to be based on sound fiscal and financial principles that allow us to realize it in a strategic way.
So what are the first steps? Is there a plan in place for the new buildings? And I've heard a lot about the rec center and City Hall. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So one of the things that the plan is looking at is a strategic phasing plan in which we want to be able to keep both City Hall and the rec center open while we're actually realizing this vision. But the reality is we don't know what that looks like today, because that's what the outcome of this exercise is going to generate, is really sort of to figure out how can we physically build it, but also financially and fiscally be able to realize it and develop it as well.
The plan sounds good, but it also sounds expensive. Have you considered cost at all?
Absolutely. And I think this is one thing where this plan maybe goes a step further than most master plans, is that we've actually incorporated as part of the scope the fiscal and financial component to this, which I've mentioned several times already. But I think it's very important that we don't want to create something that seems purely aspirational. We want to have it rooted in reality so that it makes sense to the community as to how we can actually realize a project like this.
Well, it sounds like we can do a lot in this area. It sounds like we have a new face in Northglenn.
Yes, and one of the things that we've heard throughout the years and through this exercise specifically is that the heart of Northglenn. And by and large, we hear a lot of folks say that E.B. Raines Park in the Civic area is really sort of the heart of Northglenn. And so we want to make sure that it remains vibrant towards the future, and that we have a vision for that heart and really help define it as something that's very special for the community.
Well, thank you, Brooke, and thank you for watching Northglenn Now. To learn more about the Civic Center Master Plan, visit www.northglenciviccenter.org.